Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk a bit about the past weekend of the Overwatch League. We had the start of the Western Region knockouts, the first 5 games of that, as well as the final 4 games, I believe, of the Eastern Region Summer knockouts. Lots of stuff going on, so let's go. We're going to start with the Western region for now. Real quick, we're going to start by throwing up the current bracket. For that, as you can see, elimination round, you had the Washington Justice victorious over the New York Excelsior. Then London Spitfire beating the Shock. Defiant beating the Justice. And then the Uprising defeating the Spitfire and the Defiant defeating the Titans. So that sets up some matches going into next weekend. We'll have Shock Vancouver, and we'll have Washington versus London, and then we will have Toronto and Boston, and then there will be some set of games. I don't know why Vancouver is listed in losers round 4 on this bracket. I have no idea why that's not supposed to be there, unless the script is leaking. Let's jump in and let's talk about the first headline related to the Western region, which is that first game that I mentioned, which was the Washington Justice taking out the New York Excelsior, ending the season for New York. Not a surprise for me. I was honestly quite surprised by how many people picked New York to win. They did not look great in this meta leading up to this weekend. Yeah, they beat Vancouver last weekend. Yes, that's a decent win. But Vancouver kind of was running some weird stuff. I don't fully think that was Vancouver at their best. And just to me, New York just struggled to find their place in this meta. When it came to trying to run Illari comps, it just did not look very good because you had Fitz usually on Illari and just didn't work. They did play some Illari this weekend with Creative on Illari and OG on Batiste. I like the theory behind it. It just didn't work particularly well. Unfortunately, they struggled a lot in this series against the Washington Justice. And of course, that means the New York Excelsior's season is over. A shame, but honestly, I think it is something to be somewhat proud of if you are New York Excelsior. I think there was a lot of very, very, very low expectations surrounding this team. You could argue just not a lot of expectations surrounding this team. Some players who have been historically good, players like Creative and Fitz, who've been pretty solid players in their careers. You have Kellen, who really was kind of trying to prove himself once again. Psycho and Shockwave, who kind of both were unceremoniously dropped last year. OG, who was kind of trying to have a mid-season redemption arc. So lots of kind of really interesting players on this roster that was able to do decently well considering the circumstances surrounding their roster. I think a lot of people expect them to be bottom 3 roster in the Western region. Maybe they would have finished ahead of London or something like that. But they end up ahead of the Gladiators, which I don't think many people expected. They end up ahead of the Valiant and the Vegas Tournament, which I think most people did expect. But getting to the play-ins is a pretty big accomplishment for a team that, like I said, I think most people expected pretty much nothing out of this team. So I want to throw respect where respect is due to the Excelsior. This was their final match. We will not be seeing them again this season. We might not see them again ever. A sad way to go for a team, of course, that started the Overwatch League as the best team in the world and just kind of fell flat in the playoffs in 2018. This was their first time back in a playoff scenario in a couple years, and it unfortunately did not go their way. But they were not a terrible watch this year. They actually looked pretty good, and they showed up, and they performed well. And so, shout out to them for that. On the other side, with the Washington Justice, ATVI is that guy. I don't know how he does it so consistently all the time. He is phenomenal. He is unbelievable. His Genji, which I thought would be one of the X factors in this series, came up clutch. There was really nothing New York could do to stop it. They really couldn't mirror it themselves. They didn't really look comfortable with the Genji pick. And you just consider just the overall just team there. Definitely some spots that I don't think the Justice are looking great. I think Tank is a bit of a question mark between Mirror and Ben Best. The map that they lost, Ben Best came in. The other 3 maps they had Mirror in. But they look very good when they can just kind of enable ATVI to just pop off, right? He is a phenomenal player. He deserves a ton of credit. I really do think he should have been an MVP candidate. If you want to talk about the kind of very literal definition of most valuable player, this Justice team wouldn't even be in the play-ins without ATVI. Genuinely. I genuinely think this team wouldn't even be close to this position if not for ATVI. He's a phenomenal player. He's so good. He's one of the best players in the league right now. He's such a phenomenal talent. I don't think he's underrated. I think a lot of people understand how good he is. He has just had the unfortunate history of not getting the chance to kind of shine on a really top-level team. Hangzhou last year was very good when he was on it, and at times they looked dominant. But this year really was kind of their chance to show up and look better. This team has talent on it. I really love Flora. I still think Flora's a phenomenal player. I think what we've seen out of Donghun and Teru has been pretty good. I think if they had made an addition at Tank, maybe mid-season, some a Korean tank or just a tank player I think would have fit the roster a little bit better. Obviously, you get Amaze as your coach, so it's difficult to kind of go full Korean with that coaching staff, but they have limitations. But when, like I said, when they can let Alfie do Alfie things, he just pounds, he just dominates, and it is a phenomenal sight to watch. And so we might be seeing the last of Washington this weekend coming up, but as long as it's not the last of Alfie, I will be quite content with whatever happens. Obviously, stinks to see teams go and get eliminated, but Alfie is such a fun watch that I'm looking forward to seeing whatever we get out of him. If it's 1 more game, if it's 2 more games, 3 more games, if it goes into the playoffs proper, we'll see. But that is really kind of my overall thoughts on that. Goodbye, New York. Justice. They survive. Let's go now to the next story, which has to do with the Battle of Canada, which the third installment of the Battle of Canada, though it did go the way of the Toronto Defiant, as the last 2 did, this one was a reverse sweep for the Toronto Defiant. Heroics from Hydron at the end of that series. That Dorado map from him was phenomenal. He looked really good on the Widowmaker. Really good game from him. Overall, the team, those final 3 maps, looked really good. Getting the win on Flashpoint is big. Obviously, small sample size for Vancouver going into this weekend. They've only played, now including this weekend, they've only played Flashpoint in the Overwatch League 3 times. They were 2-0, I believe, the last 2 times they played it. But now losing it to Toronto here on Suravasa, I believe, was the pick for the Defiant on that one. But all in all, very good win from the Defiant. This is the type of thing that I want to see from a team like the Defiant. Top level teams, and I've always used this as a kind of a metric. Generally speaking, better teams, the better you are as a team, the more discipline you have, the more likely you are to get reverse sweeps. It's not always necessarily the case. You look at the LA Valiant this year, they had 2 reverse sweeps this year for their 2 wins were both reverse sweeps. Now, this is a team that did not perform well overall in the season. They only had 2 wins. They finished at kind of the bottom. But they were a team with strong mental and a strong kind of base and their kind of strong team coordination that they wouldn't let themselves kind of get into that place. I think there is a point where a reverse sweep goes from like, kind of an impossibility to a probability, if that makes sense. Like, there's always a moment in a game that you can kind of tell that the air has shifted. It's usually on the 4th map, or I guess if it's a 7-map series, the 5th or 6th map, where there's just this sense of this kind of shift in the air where you can see that the team that performed well early kind of burned all their fuel very quickly, and the team that lights fire later has kind of picked it all up and has now started to really kind of read the other team, figure the other team out, and go, okay, now we've gotten the read on you. We got a map win under our belt. We now need to win this map, and we feel like we have a pretty good sense of what it is you want to do as a team, how you feel comfortable as a team, the types of things that you tend to try to favor. We feel like we have that kind of locked down. And that was, to me, Toronto this series. They just looked like they had a fire that got lit under them going into map 3. And I feel like from that point on, they just did not let up. They kind of knew if we want to get to Toronto, if we want to make it to the playoffs, we want to play in front of the home crowd, our best bet is to get through the upper bracket if we can. But if not, it's to get as far in the upper bracket as we can and just minimize the amount of games we have to play to get there. The fewer games we have to play to get to the playoffs, the better. And I think that really was kind of the vibe there. I also think that they just are a very interesting team to watch. They're one of the only teams really, if not really, they might be the only team that is really sticking to the Illari. I think that you see the way Surmajed plays the hero, you kind of understand why. I understand why RuPaul said that he thinks Surmajed is the best Illari, because he plays the hero in such an interesting way. He plays the hero in such a kind of aggressive way, and it's very interesting because I think last season, one of my criticisms for Majed as a player was he's an incredibly mechanically talented player. You can see how just strong his mechanics are, but he was always a little too aggressive. He would play, he'd be playing Zen and he'd be pushing a little too far into the front line, and you'd be wondering what he's doing. He'd kind of get himself killed doing that. But with Illari, you kind of need that play. You need your Illari to kind of find that value and get those kind of picks. And so his play style fits super well for the hero. I'm curious to see if there's any maps coming up in the series against Boston next week, or if they make it to the playoffs, if we see more opener come in and kind of fill that Lucio role on certain map types, because it seems like they are just committed to running the Illari, which is very unique. Not a lot of teams are running the hero in a prominent sense. Like I said before, New York did run the Illari, but it was only for like a part of a map. It wasn't a full map. Toronto runs it full time. They are running double flex. They're running, I think it's Ana Illari the entire time. And it's looking very good. I think there are definitely limitations to it. They don't have the speed boost that Lucio gives you. So rush compositions, you kind of have to play a very different way. They seemingly like to play the poke style, obviously. I think that's good for Toronto if they can play heroes like Sigma. Kalush feels very comfortable there. If you can put Hydron on Widow, that's a very good role for Hydron. We saw how good he looked in that Dorado map against Vancouver. So I think that is why we see that out of Toronto, because I do think it plays very heavily into their strengths. And I think Spectra is a very good player, that he's able to kind of make those solo plays you need out of him. You don't need to give him the resources like you would in kind of a dive composition potentially, or he doesn't need to be in a rush comp where he's playing a hero like May or something like that. He can play something like Echo, and he can fly around, and he can kind of sneak around the map, and he can go for those flanks and there's sticky bombs and all that type of stuff. And I think that works very well for what Toronto does. And I think it's a very unique style. And I like it because it's unique and it's good. And I think it can work against a lot of the top teams in the league to some degree. I still don't think they're at the level of your Houstons and your Bostons and your Floridas. I'm interested to see their game against Boston because I do think Boston is still that tier above them. But right now, I think Toronto is better than every other team in the play-ins. I think they are a really good-looking team. They beat a Vancouver team that we all know is a very good team. I still think Vancouver has their problems with their limitations in their hero pools, specifically on DPS. We did see Heesang play some Widowmaker. He did have some decent moments on the hero, but it's still not something that I look at and go, he's got it all figured out. He's got it all on lock. He's a really good Widow. It doesn't feel that way when you watch the way that he plays. He's good on the hero. He can pick it up if need be. It's definitely not a strength. So I think that stylistic difference was interesting to watch in action here. Because I think when you had to get to those poke maps, which I think Escort in a lot of ways is a very poke-heavy meta right now, Vancouver struggled. And I think that is their biggest problem, is they don't have necessarily the flexibility to go to every type of composition. But when they can play the things they're good at, when they can have Sugar Free on Genji, and they can put Heesang on a hero that he's strong at, if you can put him on Tracer, then they look very good. You put him on Echo, stuff like that. that's where Vancouver shines. And so this was a really good match to kind of see the stylistic differences in how they worked with each other and how they worked against each other. Really good match. I think probably the match of the weekend. Very fun match. If you didn't see it, I definitely recommend checking it out and watching this one as my personal pick for the weekend. Let's move now to the Eastern region, however. Lots of interesting stuff happened over there, of course, because it was the end of the summer knockouts. So we now have our 2 teams that are qualified for the playoffs from the Eastern region. We knew last week that the Hangzhou Spark made it in. They had clinched a spot last week, so we knew they were going. This weekend was all about figuring out who would be joining them. Would it be the Dallas Fuel? Would it be the Seoul Infernal? Or would it be the wild card O2 Blast roster? We now know that the answer is the Seoul Infernal. Let's throw up the 2 brackets to explain how we got there, and then we'll talk a bit more about the Infernal. Here is the bracket for the A bracket. The full bracket here. Definitely the biggest surprise in this bracket was Poker Face making it all the way into that lower bracket finals, dropping the series to the Dallas Fuel. They beat Dreamers, which is definitely a bit of a surprise. They beat Panthera, which is a good, decent win for them. All of their wins were against contenders teams. I think that is something definitely to make note of, right? They did not beat any Overwatch League teams, I think, at all this season. But they beat they beat every contenders team they played against in this bracket. They beat Panthera, they beat Rhodes, they beat Dreamers, and then ultimately fell to a good Dallas Fuel roster. Not really a lot to kind of take away from them there. But of course, the Hangzhou Spark, they have been dominant against the Dallas Fuel this year. They have just had the Fuel's number. The Fuel have been unable to do anything against the Spark. It's a very interesting thing to look at because the Fuel were very good in this second half of the season. They were very good in the summer knockouts. And they played Hangzhou 3 times between the summer qualifiers and the summer knockouts. And I think the map they won in the finals was the first map they've won the entirety of the season against the Spark. Maybe in the first half they won one, but I don't think they did. They were in 3-0 a lot early in the season. So Dallas, as good as they've been, they just do not have they don't have the dog in them to beat the Hangzhou Spark. And so this win for the Spark did eliminate the Fuel from getting that final playoff spot. So they will be playing in the play-ins. Sorry if you heard that. They'll be playing in the play-ins. But the final spot now was between O2 Blast and the Seoul Infernal. Depending on the results of the B bracket, if the Infernal beat the Dynasty in the lower bracket finals, they would have automatically advanced and made it in. Or if the Infernal lost to the Dynasty, but Dynasty beat O2 Blast, Infernal would move on. And if we look at the results of that B bracket, you can see that the Dynasty were not only victorious against the Seoul Infernal, they were also victorious against O2 Blast, which pushed the win and in for the Seoul Infernal. We'll come back to this B bracket in a little bit. Let's talk about the Seoul Infernal. Despite the fact that they lost to the Dynasty 3-2, close series, they ultimately are the team that will be going to Toronto here through the knockouts alongside the Hangzhou Spark. Not really a surprise. I think if you consider the season as a whole, it would have been nice to see O2 Blast go in. It would have been fun if they managed to make it. But ultimately, it is the Seoul Infernal that get that final spot, despite the fact that they lost. They've been very good all year. They're one of the best teams this season in this Eastern region. Arguably, they've been the best team. I think the Spark have been more consistent, especially in these kind of knockout and tournament style games. They had the better run in the midseason madness. We were able to consider it that. They won a game and the Infernal didn't. That's the extent of it. They both got the bottom 2 spots in the tournament. So how much better did they do? Not really that much better, but certainly interesting to see the fact that the Infernal, who arguably deserved it the most, like I said, as interesting and fun as it would have been if O2 Blast made it, would have been a very unique and interesting story to see O2 Blast kind of have that run. The Infernal arguably deserve it the most out of anybody. Maybe the Fuel deserving it more. I think it would have been odd to see the two teams in the A bracket get in. Obviously, we have all the problems with the way the knockouts in the Eastern region have been handled. I still don't love the format. I still have a lot of problems with the format's done, but I understand why they did it. I'm not going to beat the dead horse. We know where things are going now. Things are a lot simpler now as we go into the play-ins. Things will be a lot more kind of logical. But good for the Infernal. I think, like I said, they deserve it. They have worked the hardest this season. I think they have had one of the most consistent runs. And I think that it would have been odd if they were a team that was playing in the play-ins. I think that in the event that there was a world where only one of the Infernal or Fuel could have made it because of the play-ins, that would have felt bad. Because I think both of them deserve the shot to get in. And so the Infernal making it, I think, is probably the best course of action. I think they're the ones that have the most likely chance to do something come playoff time. I don't know what that something will be, but they certainly are one of the teams that has the best chance of doing anything. So at least for that reason, I do feel like they certainly are the team that deserved it the most. But, of course, they did lose their game in that lower bracket finals to the Seoul Dynasty, who had a very good weekend, 3-2 win over the Infernal and a 4-1 win over O2 Blast, who O2 Blast were kind of their kryptonite in the summer stage. They lost to them during the qualifiers. They lost to them 3-0 earlier on in the knockouts, but they cleaned up 4-1 win over O2 Blast in the finals here, which, of course, is the thing that solidified the spot for the Infernal. I think the Dynasty are getting good at the right time. I think that the changes they made late in the season, the addition of Vindame and Easy Han, definitely helped this team out. I think that I think the meta is starting to shift in a way that they can be a little bit better. Bellisry had a very good game against O2 Blast. Krillin had a good game against the Infernal. So you know this team has really solid players. They have some very big, talented pieces. You have Prophet at the kind of head of this roster. He's always going to be a really good piece for this roster. He's always going to be able to kind of elevate this team in a lot of ways. And so I think they're getting good at the right time. It'll be interesting to see how they perform in the play-ins. I think when you consider the fact that this team wants to get in a lot, it makes sense that they really did want to get O2 Blast out of the bracket, because Infernal getting an insta-lock into the playoffs is the best possible situation for the Dynasty, because that's one less team they have to worry about taking their playoff spot. Dynasty has one concern right now, and that is we just have to beat Dallas. They've struggled against Shanghai this year, so they should definitely make sure they can get Shanghai out of the way. But I think when you look at the total kind of level of play across the recent kind of parts of the season, I think the Dynasty have been significantly better recently than Shanghai have been, than Guangzhou have been. So really it comes down to, can they beat Dallas? Dallas is a very good team that has limitations in terms of what they're able to do. They don't have the widest hero pools in the league. So it's definitely a route in for the Dynasty. I think them having this good performance is what you want to see from a team that is potentially looking as a dark horse playoff team. They feel similar to Toronto and me. I think depending on what happens with Seoul Dynasty or Dallas, either one of those teams, I don't feel great about their chances. If the league goes into a Zarya meta, which there's a fear, there's some conversation around it because of the recent patch, I don't think it'll happen. But if it did, there are some rumored moves and stuff happening that make you think maybe that is a possibility. If that is the route it goes, I mean, that is perfect for Dallas. They would love that. I mean, Dynasty with Void, that's still pretty good too, but certainly that would be really good for Dallas. But at least with Dynasty, we're seeing the results that you want out of this team. You are seeing them actually have good players that have performed well, that have had really good results in the season, and just historically good results in the league's history, finally start to get their stuff together. Vindame, kind of that mid-season redemption arc, now back with the Seoul Dynasty. He's looking better. Easy Han comes back after his time in Contenders and with the Valiant last year. He's a contributing part of this roster. And Prophet, he is doing his most to try to bring this team to the title that he has been chasing again since 2018. He got a tournament last year, but he hasn't gotten that coveted Grand Finals trophy since 2018. He certainly wants another one. And so we'll have to see what happens with the Eastern play-ins next weekend. But I'm excited for that, and we'll get there when we get there. That's going to be all, though, for this video. If you enjoyed this video and want more like it in the future, consider liking and subscribing, as your support does help out a lot with the channel. Let me know in the comments down below your thoughts on anything that happened this weekend. Best games, worst games, favorite moments, anything and everything you want to talk about from this past weekend. Let me know in the comments down below. But that is going to be all for me for today. Thank you all once again. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.